drinking water.
Yeah,
Okay.
maybe.
Are we live
maybe
now?
Captain Deadpool should be cut off.
We're live
here.
now. We're live now.
All right. Sorry,
everyone.
everybody. We just had like a 7-minute long conversation, and I did not hit the live button because I'm not, in fact, an adult. I'm only cosplaying as one.
Kip,
So-
It's a good thing somebody's paying attention. We would have gone.
My wife, she's the adult.
Okay, Nerds and Heresy. Here we are.
Yeah. Sorry, guys. So
Best intro ever.
I know. You're welcome.
won the Academy Award of the most botched.
Hey guys, we got
Awkward.
3 doctors on the show today.
Yeah. We're having fun though, and that's all that matters. That's all.
So
it's
if
not
you got a
about
rash,
so much as it's about
Wrong
having fun.
doctors.
That's what we're going to go with.
Not those doctors.
I need a
You know,
doctor of.
I went to one of the guys I was in graduate school with, Dan. Maybe I don't know if you know Ian.
Ian
Wear it.
Young?
Ian Wear it.
Not really. No.
Okay, he teaches at he teaches in Washington State.
Okay.
But he told me that at the place where he did like his undergrad, his Bible college degree, there was actually a teacher there who had like his THD, like his seminary doctorate, and would actually go and park in the doctor's parking stalls at the hospital and brag about it afterwards, because he's a doctor after all. So, but there's honestly people out there who play doctors on TV and pretend to be real ones. So,
Well,
Listen,
no
yikes.
one's ever claiming that we don't have delusional people.
Listen, Dr. Oz. Dr. Oz.
oh well, there's one, right?
In my whatever.
I swear Oz is
Yeah.
going to slap you for that one.
Okay. So I know we already did this backstage, but no one saw it. So we have
I'm gonna mute.
Dr. Josh Bowen, we have Dr. Kip Davis, and Dr. Dan McClellan from TikTok here on the show tonight. Dan, do you want to briefly run through that one more time? Because I failed
happy
miserably.
to. So I'm Dan. A lot of you know me from TikTok. I've been on there for, I think, since March or April, maybe. But I have a PhD in theology and religion. I wrote my dissertation on cognitive science of religion and the conceptualization of deity in the Hebrew Bible. That's one of my areas of specialization, and I'm trying to help folks who are not academically literate to gain some purchase on the academic study of religion and the Bible, understand it a little better, understand where the field is, what is going on, because there's a lot that we're talking about that the general public doesn't really hear about, and there's way too much misinformation. People who are talking, did you hear about this guy Fraser and what he's saying about religion kind of stuff, and that is just causing a lot of issues. So I am hoping to try to democratize a little bit the academic study of religion and the Bible and the resources and the perspectives of scholarship. And it gets a little chippy sometimes, but we have fun.
Yeah, it is a struggle over there on the clock app. It's my Groundhog's Day. You have you're going to be publishing a book next year, is that correct?
Yeah, I finished my dissertation, and everybody like, this is phenomenal. Too many $3 words. So I rewrote the whole thing, and it's aimed a little more towards a general readership. And it's still going through an academic press, SBL Press, Society of Biblical Literature Press. It will be out next year, but I went through an open access series. So you can buy a hard copy if you like, but it will be a PDF that will be freely available that anybody can get off the internet, share, do whatever they want with. Because
I love that.
That is exciting.
That is, I like it when scientists do that. I prefer it that way because I am broke. I also like to support those that don't do it, but only when it's not going to go through a third party. That's anyway. I'll let you keep going. Keep going.
and SBL Press has a pretty good setup. It's not one of those situations where a lot of people, a lot of publishers have open access where they expect your institution to pay 10 grand for you to publish. SBL Press didn't charge anything, although my contract, the remuneration paragraph is like one line long. It's like you get 10 free hard copies, end of remuneration. So, if they sell 1 million hard copies and make a bunch of money, that's all theirs. I don't think they're anticipating that, but I just want to get the scholarship out there. I want it to be read as widely as possible. I want it to be as accessible as possible, because I think one of the biggest problems with our religious and biblical illiteracy is the fact that a lot of stuff is really difficult to access.
Yeah.
And, it's getting harder and harder to be a scholar these days as well. So nobody is getting rich off of that stuff. The universities are probably the biggest villains in this, but
Yeah.
Don't get me started on
No, me neither.
access contracts and right
Academic
there.
transparency, please.
No,
At least you got
exactly.
10 copies, Dan.
Yeah, I didn't go through Peter's because they were going to be like, look, we'll give you 30% off. But
Oh,
that's about all you
wow.
got.
I've published 3 books through Brill. Oh no, that's Brill. That's right. You went through SBL.
Yeah.
No, that's way better.
And they've been
So-
great. Jeffrey Stackert is my editor, and he's a great Pentateuchal scholar at the University of Chicago, and he's been great. The reviewers have been great so far. So yeah, it's been a great experience, and I'm looking forward to getting the book out there and getting some interaction from folks in the academic community and in the general public. So. And I don't even have 10 friends to give copies to, so I'm probably going to give a bunch of them away on TikTok. So
Looking forward to it. So real quick,
So I got to get on TikTok.
once we
Yeah.
once we get back past the introductions and the comments, people are asking if they can ask questions. Yes, you can absolutely ask questions, send super chats, and we're gonna have a conversation and just ask whatever questions you wish, and we'll see how that goes. But yeah, everyone's free. I can't guarantee it'll be answered, but definitely ask questions. We're watching. Dr. Kipp, did you want to go next?
Sure.
Or should we call you
So-
Dr. Kill?
Dr. Kill is in the house.
Dr. Kill, bad scholarship.
I'm Kip Davis, and I run a YouTube channel. Dan and I go quite a ways back. He was an MA student at Trinity Western University, right around the time that I was doing a postdoc there. So we've known each other for quite a while, and he reminded me, in our first our dress rehearsal of this introduction here backstage, he reminded me that when we first met, it was very, very shortly after we first met, he and I actually got to talking about the materiality of the Dead Sea Scrolls and some of the problems with the research on the materiality of the scrolls up to that point, and that kind of sparked in me a movement, a direction that I've sort of taken forward ever since then, and I've basically spent my career to this point just investigating matters of scribalism and material, and I'm big on reconstruction and continually improving these features in our discipline. So some of this is Dan's fault, but
Now we know who to blame.
there you go, Dan.
you know what? It blames me
so-
for everything else. So
I did want to say, so Josh and Dr. Josh and I have we did a video recently critiquing a video of inspiring philosophies. There's a second part that is still upcoming, and it will be coming soon. And in the meantime, I've been otherwise engaged because I'm going to be making my my debut as an animated cartoon on Paulogia's channel
Yes.
this
So
week.
excited.
This week.
I've been on Paulogia.
Oh, hey, that's awesome. I'm worried though that he will never have me back because
I had the same fear. He is very chill. He's very chill. Like I
Well-
was like, I don't know what I'm doing. I'm sorry. He's like, no, that's good. This is perfect.
so
I can work with this.
I insisted on scripting it because I'm terrible. Well, I think I'm terrible doing these just impromptu kind of things, especially when it's topics that require some thought and some depth. But when I sent him notes and started plugging things into the script, it's enormous. It's huge. I don't like it's probably gonna be like the longest video he's ever made. So I'm just gonna apologize in advance to everybody for that. That's
I feel like I can vouch for that. Scripts that you write are incredibly long.
I apologized to him for being too short, and he was like, "No, thank you. The shorter videos do better on YouTube." The last video I had to sift through 3 hours of banter in order to get the dialogue I used for this. So, yeah, I think it'll be fine.
I hate to say it, but I don't think you're making Kip feel any better.
No, not at all.
Oh well, okay, maybe not.
So
Although we've already established
that's-
I'm no good at this. To be fair.
I'm really curious to see how it gets animated.
I'm
Oh,
very
I know, me
excited,
too.
yeah.
he asked me
I'm excited for the
he asked me a couple days ago if I had any wardrobe choices, and I just responded. I said metal. I said, make me look as metal as you possibly can.
Well, I mean, we already
like
have
a
sort of
Eyeliner.
an idea, right? I mean, the Vice Rhino,
Right.
Vice Rhino,
Yeah. That's true. That's true. But I felt that was a little understated for my taste. So
All right. Well, Dr. Josh, we're going to have you go next and last because there's
All
nobody
right.
else. And then we'll get in the conversation.
Excellent. Well, I'll be quick. So, Dr. Josh, I have a PhD in Assyriology, minor in Hebrew Bible. Did a bunch of archaeology shit while I was at Hopkins. So I try to, use that when I can here online. Megan runs Digital Hammurabi. She's the brains and the looks. So I just kind of contribute now when I can. But yeah, she does phenomenal work trying to make Assyriology and the ancient Near East accessible to interested non-specialists. But yeah, I mean, we do everything from teach Sumerian to people to, talk about controversial topics in the Hebrew Bible to talk about how writing was invented and, letters in the Old Akkadian or Old Assyrian period. I just a little bit of everything. So, yeah, I got a couple of books out. They're all published through Digital Hammurabi Press so that we can make some money from them because y'all fools giving your money away. No, I'm just kidding. But no, teasing.
make sure you buy Dr. Josh's books.
Yeah.
We've established this the last time he and I were on a stream together. You buy Dr. Josh's books. You pirate mine from the internet. And you have my
Still looking
permission.
for that, by the way.
Really? Oh.
I'm not good at navigating the dark web to find
Wait.
Oh, it's not
free
that
books.
dark.
The
I was gonna
gray
say,
web.
wait. Is it the link you sent me? Should I just send that to him? Is that the same thing?
Really?
Did I?
Have you been holding out on me, Nat?
I don't know.
I don't even know how to respond right now.
I got sent some stuff. I'm still reading it.
Oh, the stuff. Oh, yeah. I don't think I sent that. Are
okay.
you? I didn't know. I didn't know that.
You can literally
Captain
send me
Tadpole
everything.
was
I
actually.
read everything.
that I'd be interested.
I didn't know. If you are,
Cool.
I'm happy to
Trying
send
not to
it
be
to you.
offended right now. It's cool. It's cool. It's all good. I'm all right.
I mean, she asked,
Fine.
so
Fine.
I begged. Let's be honest. I begged.
And I guess I could mention that I have a TikTok account.
Yeah, you
Oh,
do. You
yeah, he does.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
I mean,
had a
I
couple
guess
people
I
think it was
don't.
No,
serious.
not Kent.
Kent
Oh,
Hovind does one, but
Yeah. We have a super chat.
Oh, already.
Yeah.
Hey, Chico.
I don't know
what
that
means.
reference.
awesome.
I don't know that
I'm
reference.
sorry, Chico. I appreciate the super chat. I don't know what that means.
Cool.
That was awesome.
If you want to, though, we actually did have a few questions earlier pop up while we were doing introductions.
Well, yeah. So
Wherever those
the
went.
I wanted to get into the topic and
Oh,
try
yeah.
to blend maybe the questions into those.
It's fine, man.
Because the topic was faith and scholarship. It was not my idea for the topic, so I'm not exactly sure how to start the conversation.
How do you keep your
because,
faith when
it was
pursuing
Dr. Kipp's,
scholarship?
idea. So yeah, I'm not sure what question to ask. Dr. Kipp, what exactly did you have in mind for this topic?
Well, I think like Josh and I have talked about this a little bit amongst ourselves. And I know Dan a little bit. And he and I sort of came through I guess the same sort of certainly the same sort of academic track. We went to the same grad school. We both went to do our PhDs in the UK. I think and I think this this probably even works too. And is something that all of us, the three of us certainly, and I think all of us are interested in, is in how we recognize our own presuppositions, how we check our own biases, and how faith plays a role in that. I know for me personally, it's something that even though it doesn't anymore, there for a long time it certainly did. So I don't know. I thought it would be interesting to have a chat just about some of the issues and some of the perspectives that that come to cross foils in the academic arena of what we do.
Okay.
Did I lose everybody?
No, yeah, like checking your biases is very important. Even when I became an atheist and I was like reevaluating everything I'd ever believed, I started to dabble with mythicism. And started reading all of Richard Carrier's work. And I started to flirt with that line. And then the more I studied, I was like, no, this Jesus was definitely a real person. So I felt like
maybe,
I was.
Maybe I could just throw this summer, every summer, my wife and I and our kids, although they're a little old now, but we have a group of friends, like lifelong friends, that we spend summers with. One of my friends is a pastor of a Baptist church in the terrible city of Edmonton, Alberta. Nobody should ever go there, by the way. Oh, well, at least you came back. So, but he and I, in a conversation that we had this last summer, I made the point to him that I don't think, in retrospect, I don't think anybody makes a faith commitment on the basis of the intellectual merits, but is something that happens, deeply internally, spiritually, personally. And he responded to me and said, yeah, he said, I think I would agree with that. He said, but by the same token, he says, I don't think anybody actually leaves the faith on the intellectual merits. And that, it's very much personal, emotional, personal. And it kind of gave me pause to go. It was one of those moments that gave me pause to go, do I agree with this? And because I don't feel like that's what I have experienced, but maybe I do have like personal baggage that I am factoring into the decisions that I make without even knowing it, right? So I think it for me, that was a moment of, as much as I think I am being coldly analytical about my own thinking and my own worldview, how confident can I really be about that?
Yeah.
Right. So, and I think it's and then, when it comes to scholarship, the stakes are the stakes tend to shift and they change. And I've been critical. Dan's a student of Peter Flint, as I was a student of Peter Flint, and I've actually. So hold on a sec here. Let me grab, if I can find it. I'm just looking at my bookshelf here.
Dr. Kipp's got a massive library just off
It's
screen.
not-
He's gonna
So-
find which.
I wrote an article in this volume. This is reading the Bible in ancient traditions and modern editions. Professor Peter Flint passed away very suddenly in 2017. That's right, isn't it, Dan? It was 2017. Do you remember?
Was it that recently? I thought it was earlier than that, but
no, because he was still like, I came back to Canada in 2015.
Okay.
It might have been It might have been at the end of 2016.
Okay.
So, but so we had my friends Andrew Perrin and Kyung Beck had already started planning a festschrift for Peter Flint. There's the how do we do that? There we go. There's the book again. And then he passed away, and it became a memorial volume. And I contributed an essay to it. And in the essay, I'm actually pretty critical of some of the work that Peter actually did in scholarship and some of the stuff he published. So, like, in that article, something that Peter and I think maybe most a huge number of scholars who've worked in the Dead Sea Scrolls have taken for granted a position. They've taken for granted a particular perspective of what constituted scripture or authoritative writings in the literature itself. And it's something, when I look at it and when I look at the arguments made for it by scholars, quite often I'm come away thinking, boy, this is a pretty flimsy set of criteria that have been set forward to suggest, well, these texts are actually scripture at Qumran. And I think it's reflective, certainly for a number of scholars. I think it was the case for Peter, that this starting point was from a faith perspective in the first place. So, scholarship, whether everyone's willing or able to admit it or even to see it in their own work, is affected by worldview and by faith, and within biblical studies especially, because the vast majority of biblical scholars are practicing Christians, Jews, and Mormons. This is something that I think is just always there. So I've been talking for a while now. I'm going to shut up.
Dan, Dr. Josh, did you have anything you wanted to piggyback off of on that?
A lot of my dissertation was cognitive science of religion, which deals in a lot of ways with what's going on in our minds, with where we get concepts of deity, concepts of the afterlife, and all this kind of stuff. And I dug pretty deep into this spectrum of cognition, from intuitive to reflective. So basically, our minds are all the time basically projecting our perception of the world outward. And there are a lot of default settings, and then there are a lot of not quite default, but not quite we're in control. Kind of we are conditioned to perceive things certain ways based on our experiences and what we're used to. And this not only affects all of our senses, but our cognition. And so there are a lot of things that when we get used to them, they just fall into the background and become intuitive and natural, and we don't notice they're there unless a need arises to interrogate them. And so, yeah, there's absolutely, it would take years and years just to identify all the ways that we engage using assumptions that are based on our own experiences. And when a whole
Sorry, I got distracted.
When you have a community of scholars and even a nation that shares a lot of experiences, shares a lot of presuppositions and expectations and things like that, these become stultifying conventions, is a word that a scholar named Benson Saylor used. Basically, they're so deeply embedded in the foundations of our cognition that we have to go looking for them just to be able to find them. And in my book, one of the that I have coming out, one of the things I talk about is how even the practice of definition. We talk a lot about how we need to define something. Even that practice itself is distorting in a lot of ways. When you dig into it with the cognitive linguistic perspective, shows that that's not how the human mind intuitively uses categories, definition. And so when we impose a definition, we're really distorting. We're creating a new way to think of this category that is distinct from how we naturally use categories. And so that's an example of what I would call a stultifying convention. Since the Enlightenment, it has just become embedded in the way that we think and that we talk. And so we think that definitions are analytically useful, when really what they're doing is helping our ideologies and our dogmatism. And one that I don't bring up a ton, because when I do, it tends to cause a lot of fireworks on TikTok. But it's something I've been studying for a while, and I hope to publish something soon on it. But racism is an example of this. With definitions, what you're doing is reducing a conceptual category to the smallest list of necessary and sufficient features. So you're saying, gather everything that fits into this category. What is the essence of this? What do all of them share, and only all of them share? And when you do that, you create boundaries, whether that's intentional or not. And those boundaries are entirely artificial, because these categories do not form, they're not used, and they're not used with any reference. They're not learned, they're not used with any reference to necessary and sufficient features. And an example I use is racism. We have a lot of debates about racism. And in Utah, I'm in Utah, for instance, and we have a state legislature trying to create rules about critical race theory in school and in state universities, and trying to prohibit it. And they don't even know what they're talking about. But the necessary and sufficient features of racism, what are they? People think, oh, it's just any kind of negative perspective based on skin color. And that is not how the term originated. It's not how it has historically been used. It has historically been used to refer to power asymmetries. It was coined in reference to the U.S. government's treatment of Native Americans. It was used to refer to Nazi and fascist regimes in Europe. It was coined. It was later used to refer to how the dominant parties in the U.S. treated African Americans and others. If you try to reduce it to necessary and sufficient features, you just get, oh, well, it's just the idea that someone's value is based on the color of their skin. And that removes the concept of power asymmetries, which allows the dominant power to then say, oh, you're doing it to me. You are pointing out that I'm white and that you're being racist to me. You're being racist against white people. And we're defining it in a way to make it a rhetorical weapon. We're not defining it because that's what it means or that's how it's been used. We're defining it in order to make it useful to our group. And there are ways that in scholarship and within faith that we do the same thing. We draw our boundaries in order to make the concept useful for our identity politics or our dogmatism. And I'm sorry, that was probably way too long-winded, but it's a way to say basically that, yeah, there are absolutely so many things that are embedded so deep in our subconscious, in the way that we're used to engaging with people. I had an interesting experience at Trinity Western because I was a Latter-day Saint coming into an evangelical environment. And the university there is interesting because you have a seminary on one side of the creek, and then you have the university on the other side of the creek. And so I was on the university side, and we were, ostensibly doing serious scholarship on our side, but they had a collegium that I would go over and spend time in across the creek. And it would be seminary students, and they would have totally different perspectives. And we were basically heretics. It was like a conservative evangelical university. Is true. And I would go across the creek, and they thought we were heretics, and they thought we should not be allowed to be studying the Bible critically at that university. But there were some folks there, other graduate students, who were coming from like MDivs and things like that. So they were in that seminary environment. And then we started talking about documentary hypothesis and JEDP, and they were like, we were told that this wasn't relevant anymore, that this had been refuted and debunked many years ago. And it was amazing how even in a conservative evangelical environment, people had become conditioned to only be able to think about it a certain way. And it just did not compute to talk about this critically. And again, I was surprised to see this level of critical biblical scholarship in a conservative evangelical university that has gone through its own issues with conservatism and the government in Canada. But it was amazing to come in from the outside and be like, wow, this is a totally different mindset, and everybody seems to be so embedded in all these assumptions that I don't share and I don't understand. But they could not see the world without them because they had, for the most part, grown up with them, been trained in them. And so the more I have studied that as a graduate student, the more I have used myself as my guinea pig to try to, I point, it back at myself and say, what am I not seeing? What am I presupposing? What am I assuming? And I've had to take criticism from lots of people. And every time I do a video and somebody says, you're assuming this, I have to sit down and try to interrogate myself. And it's hard work. And it's nobody can ever really be truly objective. it's we are conditioned to accept so many things without questioning them. In the Latter-day Saint world, they talk about in the critical Latter-day Saint world, they talk about having a shelf. And when you have accepted something and you don't critique it, you don't interrogate it, you don't examine it anymore, you put that thing on the shelf. And that is just there for you. And you can draw from and appeal to it. But then at some point, they talk about your shelf breaking. And this, I don't know that this metaphor is used in the deconstruction community, but in the Latter-day Saint community, that's basically the equivalent of deconstruction. Your shelf is just carrying too much that you're not supposed to, you're not allowed to, you're not going to question, and the shelf breaks. And at that point, you now have to pick up these pieces and start examining what's going on. And I think that's related to this idea of we get so used to things, we stop thinking about them, and they become second nature, they become intuitive. And I feel like I've gone way.
Oh no, I'm very fascinated because this is helping me understand my own stepfather. So this is really interesting.
Your story actually reminded me of something and unlocked a core memory. My very first year in college, I only did 1 year at this college. It's called Johnson Bible College in Knoxville, Tennessee. And it was affiliated with the Church of Christ, but it was non-denominational. I was literally the only charismatic Pentecostal there. And I went there because I had a great grandfather who went there, and yada, yada. Long story, boring. But anyway, I went there, and when people found out I was charismatic Pentecostal, they were very standoffish towards me. And I didn't understand why for like 4 straight months of being there. Nobody really wanted to interact with me. I didn't know why. Till one day we were all just like hanging out, chatting. And one guy was like, "So I have a question for you." I was like, "Yeah, sure, go for it." And he was like, "No judgment. I'm just genuinely curious. Do you think that we are all going to hell because we don't speak in tongues?" And I was like, "What? No. What? Who says that?" And they were like, "We all say that's what y'all believe, right?" I was like, "No, speaking in tongues is like the initial evidence of the infilling of the Holy Spirit. It has nothing to do with whether you go to heaven or hell." And they were like, "Oh, well, that's what I've been told." And they were like, "Yeah, that's what we've all been." "Oh, so this whole time you all thought that I thought you were going to hell because you don't speak in tongues." So yeah, that reminded me of that story. I hadn't thought about it in a long time, so I decided to share.
I'm seeing a lot of confusion in the comments, I think, with
there's a lot of back and forth in the comments.
What racism has to do with faith and stuff like that. It was an illustration. It was probably like I said, a little too controversial.
No, never. I love controversy. Let's work on it.
But one other thing I wanted to
figure out why,
without feeling like I'm bogarting everything.
Good.
With this idea about religious faith, I think there is something to the fact that people get into religion and get out of religion, what we call religion anyway, not necessarily because they're convinced of things, but because they find fulfillment, they find joy, they find all different kinds of things in the community, in the ritual structures, in the phenomenology of it, in the intellectual challenge of the scriptures, in the history of it, excuse me, in our family backgrounds, that there's so many different dimensions to what makes those things attractive to people, and to I have not experienced it coming out the other direction, but I do know from a lot of research into what they call leave taking, that there's a large degree to which similar concepts and phenomenological things influence leaving. It's not, we tend to think of ourselves as rational creatures where we have this binary true, not true, and I've become convinced this is true, I'm in, and then one day those switches the other, whatever goes the other way, I've become convinced it's not true, I'm out, when there's so many different entanglements associated with how it makes us feel, how we feel about the people around us, how
sorry, go ahead.
Go ahead. No. And so I think there's so much more to it than we think, because one of those things that is so deeply embedded is this notion that we are rational creatures and that we do things either because they're true or they're false. When so many of the things that we do because they scratch an intuitive itch, or because they make us feel good, or because our dad did it, our granddad did it, our great granddad did it, and we're not going to break that chain. We're not going to be the one in the family to abandon it. That was something I didn't understand as an LDS missionary in South America. People would be like, "Oh, I know this is true, but my father was a Catholic, my grandfather was a Catholic, I got married in a Catholic church," and it did not compute at the time for me. But the more I learn about communal ideas and how people in less individualistic and more communalistic societies, how they structure their values, the more I could understand what that how that would impact their perception of themselves and their position within this broader community that is not just synchronic, but goes back in time to their ancestors. And so there's so much more to it than
there's a lot
I think we give it credit. Sorry, I'll shut up for the rest of it.
I want to table this sometime, Dan, because I want to have a conversation about this. Like, we need to bring you on for like a separate reason, because I really want to dig into this. Yeah. But I also want to hear Dr. Josh, because I've seen, I don't know what moment it was, but I saw his face go, and then went right back down. And so I know there's something went through his head, and I just wanted to see if he
was probably reading the comments or
that could have been the case too. In that case,
yeah. But he probably forgot by now, guys.
Yeah, after about 9 seconds, it's gone. So
hey, that's shorter than a goldfish. So
making fun of my MS. That's pretty rough, man.
It's classy, isn't it?
Oh no. I'm bad. I'll leave. It's fine. I'll just go.
Just teasing. No, I suppose there's an echo that I'm getting. Is it me?
There is.
Okay. It's not going to work out well because I can't hear my own voice back to me. I don't know how y'all listen to it. I guess when I think about commitments, so I've been writing all weekend this chapter on violence in the Hebrew Bible for volume 2, and trying to come at it from a slightly different direction, because what we always talk about is things like hyperbole. You hear hyperbole thrown around all the time, and people sort of use that as a get out of jail free card when it comes to ethical problems with violence. But one of the ways that I want to come at this is sort of in line with what we're talking about here, and that is to try to demonstrate the bias that I think a lot of people come to the biblical text with. So I'm going into sort of my wheelhouse and looking at the Middle Assyrian and Neo-Assyrian kings and some of the inscriptions and some of the literature that comes from those periods, and looking at the ideology that stands behind the Assyrian Empire as it built and grew. And one of the things that we see is that the Assyrian Empire had this sort of core periphery, the land of Asher and the yoke of Asher concept. So it was like we have the main area that is Assyria, and then we have the lands outside of it. And the divine mandate is to conquer them, right? We have to bring them into subjection. And as you can imagine, there's justification for that, right? And you see it in the textual data. Why, like, the king can't just go kick ass and take names, right? He could, but from a moral standpoint, they have ethical systems like we do. Just different, And so you see a very sophisticated, grouping of justifications that the kings and just that what we see in the writings that come through. And so things like, and it's not just that they're the foreign, They can't just be that they're out there and we're in here, and so that gives us the right to go conquer them. No, you see language like they're sinful, they're rebellious, they're wicked, right? They've rebelled against the one true God who has extended his benevolent arm toward them, right? And by doing this, they've sworn the oath to Asher. They've sworn the oath to the deity of the Assyrians, and then they went back on it. They broke their oath, that they swore toward the gods. Now, so that gives them justification to go and to do that. Well, anybody that reads that, most anybody that reads that, unless you're practicing some sort of, Assyrian worship, you're probably going to go, yeah, well, we see right through that, right? Come on, you're trying to, for political reasons, for ideological reasons, you're trying to make it so that you can go conquer. But then you say, well, let's read Joshua. Let's read Deuteronomy. Well, now, and I think that is something that everybody needs to come to grips with when you come to the biblical texts. And I'm not saying that all Christians do that. Megan's a Christian, right? She doesn't do that. But I think so often here online, so many Christian apologists come at this. They have these, as Dan said, things sitting up on the shelf. Mm-hmm. These are pegs. They've been driven into the wall. We know these things to be true. So we're starting to hang stuff on them, and everybody loves that. And we all love that, right? We all love the things that we can drive into the ground or into the wall, whatever, and start hanging stuff on. But the reality is, there are far fewer things that we should be hanging shit on, without questioning it than. It's one thing to say Lugal means king in Sumerian. All right, I can throw that up on the wall. Or Eved means slave. Even something like that. It's never quite that simple. So I think being able to come at that and to look at it from an analogous situation and say, what would I think about the new Assyrian king going, Tiglath-Pileser III, going and conquering to the west, and saying, well, it's because they're really wicked and sinful people. Well, it's like, well, wait a minute, are they though? We don't have any objective evidence in the archaeological record or in the historical record outside of these royal inscriptions that would suggest that these people are actually really wicked and sinful. So why do we just buy that? Well, because of our bias, right? We think this is a holy text. We think this is an inspired text, and we have that type of interpretive model. And again, I don't think that you have to do away with inspiration. I think that there are interpretive models or views of inspiration that somebody can hold that allow for the text to say what it says, right, in the genre that it speaks. But it's this online, more fundamentalist, more apologetic approach that I think really needs to be tweaked. So,
if I could add to that, one of the reasons that I think that you identify that someone who's living in that kingdom is gonna be like, oh yeah, sure, if that's the rationalization that's provided. We're so much more likely to not question something that serves our own social identities and our interests within our social identity. However we identify, whatever groups we identify with, if something is advancing the interests of that group, we're not even, generally our intuition is not going to let us question it, because if there's anything that has been evolutionarily embedded in our cognition, it's our own self-interest. And that includes our social identities. And so I think when people who identify as Christians see something that is in a text that is supposed to be an inspired text, intuitively, we're just set up to do whatever we need to do in order to find value, inspiration, whatever in that text. And yeah, that's something that, and nobody's immune from that. And this is something I get a lot of pushback because I get harassed by all sides of the discussions because somebody somewhere has always said something from any perspective where I've been like, well, you got to think about it like this. And they think that I'm on their team and therefore I should be supporting them. And it's because of that intuition about being on the team that they're not questioning it. And so when we should be questioning our own teams, and we all have a number of overlapping and different teams that we're a part of, we should be questioning those most significantly if we care about the integrity and the progress of our team, whatever that is.
No, I feel you. I go after other atheists from time to time for making bad arguments, and they don't like it when I do that. But it needs to be done.
Do any of you guys watch Ben, the amateur exegete?
No.
I think I know that one.
Well, you guys should start.
He's amazing.
The YouTube channel?
Oh yeah. He's on YouTube and he's fantastic. But he's actually doing a series right now, where he is going through some of the worst atheist memes, and he's a public atheist who has a strong interest in the Bible, and he had some training too. I'm not entirely sure how far he went, but he definitely had some training in biblical studies. But so he's doing this series right now where he's looking at like atheist memes that he picks up online. Just, these ridiculous caricatures of Christianity or of the Bible, and is systematically basically, showing how they're just completely off base. But yeah, he's a must follow. You guys should seriously.
What was it called again?
The Amateur Exegete. He's on YouTube.
And then it looks like he's got a blog at Amateur Exegete.
Yeah, he's got he writes a really good blog too.
Really?
He reviewed he does a bunch of book reviews, but he including he reviewed Praise I Am That I Am's slavery book, and
he had 420 subscribers. So
not enough.
I just made it 421.
Okay, good. But
he's a real sharp guy.
You ruined it.
He also did a review of one of S.J. Thomason's book, and really one of her books really took her to task on how she plagiarized a bunch of other YouTube apologists. But yeah, he's a good read, and he's a good watch.
I know what I'm doing tomorrow.
Well, there's lots there. So
not painting my garage.
I actually think that's something I have to do over the Christmas holidays.
Oh, you got to paint your garage too?
I do. Yeah.
Really?
I got to insulate.
I was just joking.
No, I actually do. My wife, she turned our garage into her, like, she's been working from home ever since the pandemic. She's a dog trainer. So we've been slowly but surely turning our garage.
Hey, I just got a puppy. I could use some help.
Hey, well, good luck with that.
You live a little ways away.
Not my problem.
But she told me if she's in there all day long, she doesn't want the walls to be, white anymore. So she needs something sunnier.
If you paint them yellow,
that's exactly what she wants.
Oh my god.
So, yeah.
She's gonna change your mind so fast. You're gonna paint them yellow, and then she'll be like, "Can't do this." Green.
See, I don't know. Like our old house used to be yellow, and she really liked that.
Oh,
so
okay, well then that's fine.
we'll see. Anyways, sorry guys about that. Hey, I had kind of a question for Dan, and I hope this is pertinent, but and I don't know if I've ever asked you this specifically, but how did you end up at Trinity?
It was actually did you have more to say, or was
I was just kind of curious about how you ended up there, kind of why, and whether that was a faith commitment, whether your faith commitment had anything to do with that decision.
It was
maybe before you start, for people who don't know, Trinity Western University is an evangelical Christian private university here just outside of Vancouver in British Columbia. I believe it's maybe the largest of its kind in Canada, if not the largest of its kind in Western Canada. But for a number of years, they ran a very, very good biblical studies program. But go ahead, Dan.
Yeah. So they had two folks there, Peter Flint, who Kip already talked about a bit, and Marty Abegg, who are enormous figures in Dead Sea Scrolls study. And then they had some other wonderful New Testament Septuagint Hebrew Bible scholars. I was finishing up my degree at Brigham Young University. I was applying for graduate schools, and Peter Flint actually visited our campus. Don Perry was a good friend of Peter Flint. Donald Perry is a professor at Brigham Young University, and he does a lot of great work on textual criticism of the scrolls. And so he was very good friends with Peter Flint, invited him down to talk to the students of the Ancient Near Eastern Studies program at Brigham Young University. And nobody had he was like, yeah, we should probably consider marketing the program to Latter-day Saints as well. They're faith-based group. We're a faith-based group. No reason they couldn't come attend our university. And I wasn't the first Latter-day Saint to ever take a class there, but I was the first Latter-day Saint to get a master's degree from there. However, it was not my first master's degree. I actually was, when I was finishing my degree at Brigham Young, I got accepted to a PhD program at Claremont Graduate University. I was going to go do something in Hebrew Bible. And then I also got accepted to a Master of Studies degree program at Oxford. And they were both offering me the same money. This was 2009, which meant that money was no money, because this was right after everything went south. And so universities were not offering a lot of money. I got turned down by Johns Hopkins, although I got to say, Ted Lewis writes the most gentle and kind rejection letters, Josh, that I have ever received. I don't know how well you know Ted, but it's like,
we're like this. He and I are pretty close. He would grade my papers, and I've said this before. It looked like he'd sacrificed a goat on it. I mean, just red everywhere, and then at the end there'd be this little wonderful work, such a great job. Like,
that was such an awesome illustration on page 2.
He's an amazing human being.
Yeah, and he is. I am currently reviewing his
phenomenal book
for Journal of the American Academy of Religion: The Origin and Character of God. Along with two others on the origins of Yahwism. But he's a wonderful scholar. But I still remember getting this rejection letter, standing in my parking lot, like, I can't even be mad about this. But anyway, I ended up going to Oxford to do the master's degree there, and I figured I can probably either get more money out of Claremont. I deferred for a year. I could get more money out of Claremont with a degree from Oxford, or maybe get a better PhD program. And then I finished my degree at Oxford, and I got an email from Claremont saying, hey, we're restructuring our whole program, so we're not accepting students this year. So even though you have an acceptance, go find something else to do. And I was kind of
nice little FU right there.
Yeah, it was. Although I was going to work with Marvin Sweeney, I think. I've since become friends with Marv. He's a wonderful scholar, but I'm not upset about that, because the application period for master's degrees was still open, and I had been accepted to Trinity Western the previous year. And so I went back real quick, and I was like, can I still come do that master's degree? And I had to apply all over again, but I got accepted, and I became a research assistant both for Marty Abegg and for Peter Flint, and that paid for it. And I had a phenomenal time. I loved my time there. I lived in Bellingham, Washington, just south of the border, in a wonderful little apartment. One of our daughters was born there, and I got to know the folks there. And it was weird to have kind of a mainly critical scholarship perspective with a little bit of faith perspective in what I was studying. But then when I was over in the collegium, hearing all of the other mainly faith-based stuff, and then just kind of a reluctant nod toward critical scholarship.
Yeah.
But
You know, no, go ahead, finish.
I was going to make a terrible joke, so go ahead.
Okay. No, I was just going to say the last position that I held at Trinity, which ended in 2019, my office was actually in the seminary building, and I was right next door to a professor there in apologetics, which was kind of weird. But I was also going to say when now I think this was a bit before Dan's time. I don't know if you guys did cross-listed courses from the graduate school with the seminary, but these got so, I mean, and I think this is illustrative of really some of the vast chasms of separation between like a confessional theological education and something that's more critical. I remember I did one. It was like an Old Testament exegesis course, and we were working on the book of Ezekiel, and the poor professor who was teaching it was Dr. Rob Hebert. He sat down in the first class and he said, okay, he said, I've got like 4 MTH students, I've got like 8 MDiv students, and then I've got you like 3 MA students. So you're all in these different degree programs and you've been thrown into my class. And he's like, I've read the different syllabi for each program. He said, so like the different course descriptions for each program that appear in the calendars. He said, and they're so different from one another. He's like, I actually had to develop 3 separate syllabi. So depending on what degree program you're in, you're going to be doing like this work. And like, honestly, it made for like a nonsensical, chaotic classroom experience, because while I and my MA colleagues were, you know, trying to get to the heart of like the Sitzenleben of the book of Ezekiel and the different redactional layers and the social political perspectives that come through in the text, you know, all these other guys at the seminary taking the same class kept on, you know, complaining about how they didn't want to hear or talk about editors or redactors, unless, of course, we could couch this in some sort of language that that made it clear this was an inspired redactor. You know, this was an actual lengthy argument that took place in the class. It was really, really wild. But yeah, it's yeah.
There's always there's a tension that is never absent when you're trying to apply critical biblical scholarship in a faith environment, because ultimately the faith environment demands that there be some kind of relevance and applicability and support for that the specific faith community. And that requires, you know, you've got to impose a bunch of different frameworks on there to make it say something that's going to be what you want it to say, rather than following the data where the data lead, because there's always the risk of that data leading you right off a faith cliff. And and a lot of universities don't want to be the ones to lead their donors' children right off the cliff of faith.
You don't say.
That's
sorry.
That's the dirty secret. That was something we used to when I taught courses at Trinity. I actually think I probably have some teacher evals kicking around here somewhere, but question was it? I think it was question 17 on our teaching evals were always, and these are evaluations that the students have to fill out at the end of every class.
I remember those.
Yeah.
Me
So,
too.
and the one question was always how did the instructor incorporate his or her Christian faith into the instruction of this course? And some courses it was really difficult. Like what I taught Hebrew, I'm like, oh, you're teaching a language. How do you incorporate your faith into this? But it's always like a sort of Damocles sort of hanging over you too, right? There's that pressure as an instructor in that environment. It's constantly like ringing in the back of your head. Okay, how do I make this about Jesus? How do I make this about Jesus? How do I make this about Jesus? So,
I mean, does it have to? Well, yeah, okay, it has to be faith, right? But I would sometimes argue it's like, okay, so find a Bible, find your favorite passage, and just have them do something. Please convert this into English and then Old English.
Yeah.
And even in congregations where they make an effort to try to engage the Bible as much as possible, there are places that it is phenomenally difficult to extract some kind of relevance out of them, that they just get skipped and they just get left behind. And what's disappointing is frequently those are the most interesting parts of the text. And I think we do a disservice to students by kind of conditioning them to accept that the only things that are valuable to study are the things that are going to personally inform your walk with Jesus or whatever. And there's so much more out there to know about the Bible, about ancient cultures, languages, and ideologies. And why can't we just appreciate them on their own terms instead of always trying to subjugate them to our own dogmas and our own presuppositions? I think that's what a university is supposed to be doing. Unfortunately, I don't think a lot of that trying to pander to the warm fuzzies of the students is, that's not a university make in a lot of ways.
I'm sorry, I've never had a professor try to cater to my warm fuzzies.
Oh, you've never been to a private college?
Yeah,
my professors tried to eat me alive. they wanted to tear me down, and I had to fight.
Well, it's in faith-based universities, student evaluations
they're everything.
That is a weapon.
Yeah.
A student can ruin a professor's career in faith-based context, because all they have to do is say that they're not doing exactly what Kippy was saying they're expected to do. Even if they are teaching 100% professionally, academically sound, and 99 out of 100 love them, if there's one who is saying, they made me question my faith or something like that, that's what's going to come up. And yeah.
The second last class that I ever taught at Trinity was an intro to the Old Testament class, and I got a terrible evaluation from that one, like surprisingly. So it was the worst one I ever got. And then when I read, because the students fill them out and they always have the option of writing out a bunch of comments, and then you as an instructor, you can go and take a look at the various comments that they've compiled. And when I went, because it was so bad, I usually never went and looked at the comments, but this was so bad, I figured I'd better.
Because you're going to be asked about it at some point.
Yeah, exactly. So when I went down and when I actually went through the comments that students provided, it came back to this over and over again. I mean, what is this garbage this guy's telling me about Noah's Ark? What? It didn't happen? And he's talking about Moses didn't write the Pentateuch. I mean, who does this guy think he is? This was the nature of the kind of comments and the feedback that I got. So suffice it to say, I was not asked to teach that class again. But and it sucked because I particularly liked that one. So
yeah, those schools are
words. Those schools there are words.
So that first college I went to that I mentioned, the reason I didn't go back is because I wasn't allowed to. The reason is I had skipped too many chapels. Now they had chapels 5 days a week. The thing is, I didn't skip any. It was my first year. I went to every single one. But there's a scanner, like a key that you walk into the gymnasium and it was behind you. You're supposed to walk in, turn around, scan your key fob, and then go. I would just walk in with a group of people and forget to do that too many times. And so at the end of my second semester, I was put on academic probation because I skipped too many chapels. And I called them and I was like, I never skipped any chapels. What are you talking about? Like, well, you didn't scan in this day. You skipped 9 chapels. So you can't come back here. And I was like, I didn't. We're like, did you take notes on those days? I was like, no, I didn't take notes on those days. You really? So they were just like, nope, you're out. Bye. So I was like, wow, cool. So obviously that's why I never went back there. But that's how dogmatic they are about that type of stuff. Like, no, you will let us force feed you Jesus, or you're not allowed to come back here.
Well, I think a large part of that is if folks are going to that regularly, they're kind of more immersed in that, spirit, that ideology, and so they're going to be more conditioned to it, and I think be a more malleable student within that university. I remember they had chapel at or something. I forget what they called it. I don't know if they called it chapel at Trinity Western. Is that what they called it?
I think so.
Did they call it chapel? Okay.
Yeah, but it wasn't mandatory.
No, it wasn't mandatory. It's a good thing.
Yeah.
I didn't go to.
They had a pretty good turnout quite often, though.
Did they?
Yeah.
It was.
I never went, but I was told they had a pretty good turnout. It was like the 30 minutes every day that I could get shit done. But, so.
Yeah, which is and I know at Trinity and I know at other faith-based schools, you have a lot of professors who are able to kind of get their job done in a good way, who manage to skirt a lot of that. But it's such an emotional expenditure for them to plan their lessons and engage their students and things like that in a way that they will be able to feel like they are teaching with integrity and engaging the material with integrity, while also meeting those expectations and also not running afoul of more dogmatic students. And it's such hard work for them. And I feel for those folks who are doing that, and there are students who are in there who want to hear the good scholarship, and it's not as big a deal to them that that their warm fuzzies be tickled or whatever, but I think it is a toxic atmosphere in a lot of ways when you try to hold that club over the heads of the professors.
Amen.
Yeah.
Oh.
Sorry to bring everybody down.
It's true though. I mean, you gotta.
It's true, and it's a shame because, as in love with the Bible as I was as a Christian, now as an atheist, I am far more interested in the Bible and the scholarship surrounding it than I ever was as a Christian. Oops, I knocked over my light. Because now I'm like, oh, this is what this actually means. Why didn't they tell us that? Why, like, it's so plain and obvious. But I would have loved to have learned this in college. And like they would like flirt with like certain things, but they would never like take you deep into it. And
I will say this in defense of like the more fundamentalist seminaries. I went to Capital Bible Seminary, which was, it's now I think been absorbed by Lancaster Bible College, but it's like a satellite campus because they ran out of money. But nobody should quote me on that because I'm not 100% sure that that's true. But given that there was so much emphasis placed on the inerrancy and inspiration of the text down to the grammatical forms.
Yeah.
The most important thing that you could do besides learning correct theology was learn the languages.
Mm-hmm.
So, I mean, like that's where my core training initially came from. So, I think I did 6 years of Koine Greek there. I did 6 years of Hebrew.
You were in seminary for 6 years?
As a THM, 126 semester hours.
Wow.
Yeah, I've been in school a long time.
Yeah.
But like I took Aramaic, I think, for 2 years, Targumic and biblical. Like we learned superlinear pointing in Targumunculos. I mean, like we were so nerdy. But like Ugaritic, and of course took Akkadian while I was there, and that's where I got introduced to Assyriology. But I mean, it was like
that sounds like so much fun.
I
can't tell if you're being sarcastic. I think it's really interesting.
It was amazing, but it was because the text is so important. So then, when I got out of when I graduated with my PhD, we moved down here to Maryland. And I started going back to this Episcopal church near where I grew up with Megan, and I was talking to one of the people in leadership about their schooling, and I was like, "So, what was it? What kind of languages did you take?" And they're like, I don't really care about that, which is fine. I'm not suggesting that that's a bad thing, but
they gave me Logos is how some of that is going these days. Which
like Logos is biblical software.
Yeah, there's. Sorry to interrupt, Josh. There's a group that thinks all you need is the Bible software or access to blueletterbible.org, and that's good enough. You don't have to learn the languages.
Yeah, that was pretty much my college. They were you get this for free. Oh, it's the greatest thing ever. You should be so happy.
See,
just be grateful for what we give you.
No,
there's people with far less.
Yeah, this is covered by your tuition. You get free in the sense that you paid for it, access to Logos. Yeah, it's not.
Okay, what were you saying, John?
Headquartered in Bellingham.
Like I will say that in this vein, there is a certain amount of comfort that I take in certain religious traditions focusing more on reader response theory and trying to get back to some sort of authorial intent. And the reason that I'm so comfortable with that and happy about it in a lot of ways is that it really allows you to engage with developed ethical systems, where we are today, and we can look back in history and say this was bad. And it doesn't matter that this ancient text in whatever its original form that we want to go back to, whatever that means, adhered to this or denounce this or whatever. They're looking at it from how does this feel? What does this feel like to me? Or how am I responding to the text? And that's meaningful. And God is using that, right? That sort of interpretive approach. I think it's actually very valuable. So it's one of the reasons I really like that church, because they do. I don't know that they go through that process of thinking about it that way, but that's certainly how they engage with it. So anyway, that's just my 2 cents about that.
And I think I really appreciate those communities that are trying to find new ways to make the text relevant, and that's one of the ways that you can do that. Because I think it's the being stuck in proving it's true that that has you just going in circles with the same old stuff. But if you're trying to find a way to make this, inform your experience as whatever, as a part of whatever community, I think it's great when reader response theory, other things like that are adopted, because you don't have to be an atheist to think that there's so much more value in approaching these things critically and thinking like that. I've seen a lot of people within religious communities who are like, the text is so much more interesting if I don't have the answers already. And if there's not just one answer that I'm supposed to arrive at, but all these possibilities, because then I have so many different roads I can explore and ways I can think about this. And the text can now inform my experience and be meaningful to me, exponentially more. And so I think it serves even religious communities, it serves them to put the always worrying about just proving to ourselves that it's true aside, and finding a way to make the text make us better people, better Christians, better whatever.
Yeah.
I will say that strategy, though, you may have 100 pages in front of you, and that strategy will push it to 1,000 very quickly.
But it sucks when you have a deadline and the semester's running out.
Yeah, right.
But I mean, a good exercise in that sort of thing, and then we can go into a different topic. But I just think this is really important for certain Christians that have certain interpretive approaches. If we were to just take 6 weeks, it takes 6 weeks in your next church cycle and teach through the Epic of Gilgamesh. You'll find very quickly that the last thing that you'll give a fuck about is whether Gilgamesh ran through a tunnel to outrun the sun, right? That's not going to be the issue. The issue is how he feels when he watches Enkidu die, right? And the mortality that he senses and this journey that he goes on to try to figure out what's meaningful in life. And then being able to take that principle and apply it back to how do we today, knowing what we know, believing what we believe, find meaning in our lives. I mean, I think it's a good exercise to do, because you don't need to prove the historical reliability of the text. That's not, I don't think people have, yeah, go ahead.
No, I was going to say, I mean, this is a common refrain in my, like, I see it in yours, certainly, Josh. It's within a lot of my own counter apologetics work, is in how much people miss out on with the text when they're fixated on this idea of the historicity of the text, or the scientific reliability of the text. I mean, the video that we critiqued, we're in the process of reviewing by Michael Jones of Inspiring Philosophy. One of the things that we really what's the word I'm looking for? One of the things we really zero in on is how much is missed when you're spending all your time trying to deflect these ideas about, the Bible's unique, Genesis 2-3 were really, really original and didn't depend on any of these other ancient Near Eastern myths. But when you take that approach, and when you're pushing all this other stuff out of the way, you're robbing yourself of a fuller, more expensive meaning of the text. I'm just the video that I just did with Apologia is all about messianic prophecy, specifically as it is applied to the birth narratives of Jesus. And it's sort of for those who are, it's within his series that he's doing on this series of Lee Strobel videos about Christmas. And like watching through Lee Strobel's video on the fulfilled messianic prophecies, I found myself going, my God, he's so fixated on this idea of, Isaiah chapter 7, verse 14 pointing to Jesus, or Isaiah chapter 11 pointing to Jesus, or Isaiah chapter 53 pointing to Jesus. He's so fixated on this that it's like he cannot even see what is valuable about these texts in their own right. And it's and that's tragic.
There's a text that we don't study a whole lot within the Latter-day Saint tradition, except as kind of a proof text for Christ, and that's Jonah. And the sign of Jonah is where we focus everything.
Yeah.
But this just, I have a presentation that I've given to a handful of different groups where I go through, and one of the first things I do is say, Jonah was not written when this prophet was supposed to have been alive. Jonah is post Sennacherib, where everything's been moved to Nineveh. This is what Sennacherib did to Lachish. We've got all this memorialized. You've got to understand who the Assyrians were. And so here are pictures of them throwing babies off the city wall and impaling people and flaying other people alive. And here is what they did. And they celebrated this. They drew pictures of it and then hung it up in their palaces back in Nineveh. And so this is who the Assyrians are. And then you've got this prophet who's told, you're going to go preach destruction to these guys. And he runs the other way. He doesn't want to. Why on earth would an Israelite want to do that? And then take them through, this is kind of an anti-prophet. The genre is being flipped. There's parody in it. But you get to the end, and the big reveal is that the reason Jonah didn't want to do this in the first place is because he knew God was going to forgive them, and he didn't want to have to be there to witness that. And that's why he's mad at God, and that's why he didn't want to be a part of this at all. And that message is a phenomenal message, and particularly in a period when we have so many things going on around the world that resonate with why someone would feel this way about the Assyrians. But such a powerful message. I love it so much. I love giving that presentation. But we just go, yeah, Jonah was 3 days in a fish. That's the sign of Jonah. That's what Christ said. It's a type of the of death and resurrection, and we move on, and we rob ourselves of so much in the text just because it has to fit in a certain slot for us, because everything has been prepackaged and we can't deviate from the lines. Otherwise, we risk somebody, not feeling like this is inspired or something like that. And it keeps us, we restrict ourselves so much when we do that. So again, I brought everybody down.
No. I
No, there's the lull in the action. Yeah, so you brought up Isaiah 7. I had a similar experience really studying that, and realizing that, as before I was taught, this is the virgin birth prophesying that Luke quotes in the end of chapter 1. But we actually go back and read it. It's written at a time where Jerusalem was under siege by two different other tribes, and this figure actually has two different names. One was to be given to him by the mother, and one was to be given to him by his father. And these two different names were to fulfill two different prophecies, and you can read about these prophecies in 2 Kings. That's where they're fulfilled. So it's just like this.
So, but the other side of this coin,
cooler story than
I'd
ever been told in church. Anyway, yeah.
No, I was going to say the other side of this coin here, when it comes to messianic prophecy, and I would say too, when it comes to thinking about reader response theories, in relation to the Bible. What people often miss, like there's this one side of, yeah, when it comes to like the messianic prophecies, most of the time they have nothing at all to do with, the way in which people imagine they were fulfilled, right? They're badly ripped out of context. They're incredibly vague, and then the interpretive lens that's been applied to them, it feels, I think when some people see that, they go, oh my god, like look at how badly these ancient Jews or these early Christians lied about the text, or abused their own text, when the other side of this coin is that this is just the way that people at the time period, like in the first century, at the time of Jesus, this is just the way they read scripture. And it's not just Matthew, and it's not just Luke, and it's not just Paul. It's like replete throughout early Judaism. You pick up the Dead Sea Scrolls, and you look through a couple of the Pesharim, which are the continuous commentaries on texts. I mean, they're full of all sorts of really creative, dynamic shit about, how the text that they're reading is speaking directly to them and about them in their present day and in their present circumstances. So, like, when I talk to people about this, I always want to make sure that they're clear that, yes, when it comes to these prophecies and supposed fulfillments, yeah, most of the time it depends on vagaries and just stuff ripped out of context. But by the same token, the New Testament authors were just doing in their minds and in the entirety of their experience, this was just how you read the Bible. This is just what you did with scripture. This is what scripture was.
One thing I'm fond of saying is that every community, whether it's a religious community or a national community or any kind of ideological community, if they have authoritative texts or traditions or rituals or anything like that, every generation has to renegotiate their relationship between that past and their needs and their exigencies in the present. It has to be able to inform that present and help them move forward and advance their own interests and goals and things like that. And if that requires rereading, then it requires rereading. That requires rewriting, then you create the books of Chronicles. If that requires Pesharim, then you do what you got to do to make it inform your experiences today. And so a lot of people, the Bible crosses so many centuries, and they're doing it already in the Hebrew Bible and into the New Testament. And so when we talk about, I've been pretty critical of the way that we engage Scripture as Christians today, but there's nothing different about us trying to make it relevant to our lives today from the way somebody in the 4th century tried to make a 6th century text relevant to them, or a Christian tried to make a Hebrew Bible text relevant to them. But I think there's value in being aware of that and knowing why we're doing it. And I think that helps us to hopefully be a little more adept at it, a little more skilled, and to do it in a more informed and critical way.
Do you think that through those changes, though, that the messages get changed as well?
Oh, yeah, absolutely. Because the message that, what's a good one? Every time I talk about Genesis 6, 1 through 4, I get in trouble.
I think you brought this up to the wrong person.
Oh, really?
No, it's okay. It's fine. Keep going.
Is that the Nephilim?
Yeah, well, Nephilim, but the B'nai Elohim, the children of God.
Yeah, the B'nai Elohim, yeah.
Everybody's like, oh, no, those are angels, and those are this, that, and the other. And I'm like, well, see,
they're the sons of Seth, man.
and I've got to point out, every one of those readings developed within a specific generation and context and rhetorical need to serve the interest of some community for whom that text was authoritative, but for whom that text may not have been all that relevant. And to create a relevance, you've got to reread it. You've got to turn them into angels. You've got to turn them into watchers. You've got to say they taught humans how to be evil. You've got to turn them into humans, because angels don't have free will, and so you can't have bad angels. And you've got to reread it so that it fits your ideologies, and it also can stay relevant. And I do the same thing with Psalm 82. People really don't like the way I talk about John 10 and the way Christ reads Psalm 82, because they want Christ's reading to be the original reading, because Christ would not have adopted, a later misreading or whatever. But it is just the reading that kept Psalm 82 relevant in a period when Adonai was already universalized, and you did not need this divine council scene where Adonai has to depose the gods of the nations so that they can take over rule of all the nations. And now your Judahites in Babylon can now worship Adonai because he is God over all the earth. And that is meaningless to first century Jewish readership. So it gets changed to, okay, these people were the Israelites at Sinai, and they received the law. They were divine. You are sons of the Most High, all of you. But then they sinned with the golden calf. Oh no, so now you're going to die like men. You're going to fall like any prince. So it gets reread to make it relevant so that this can still be something we read and we get something out of it, and it forms our experience. And so there's so many ways that the message has to change to remain relevant. And I think that's what makes it so complex to parse all these different layers, is because we are looking through a stack of these interpretive lenses that all these traditions and all these generations have given us, and we've got to try and take them out and see what each one of them is doing to be able to understand all of this. For me, I'm sure for you all to some degree, that's what makes it so exciting. I get animated when I get to talk about how these texts were meaningful to these people, and that's what makes it more meaningful to me.
Oh yeah, no, I love reading into the original languages and the context of the original languages to actually understand what people were like back then. But it's my own personal problem. This is my own issues. It's a personal issue. That watching the Bible adapt and change through time makes it irrelevant in my mindset at this point. So it's difficult for me to watch this occur and then still have people studying the Bible, like the King James version, and having them like quote to me via King James, and I'm just like, that's not even the original text. Like I can't handle.
Yeah.
But this is my own. This is something that we can discuss on another time. I
think that's relevant
topics.
I think that the way that you are seeing it and the way that they're presenting it, I think, is relevant too, because part of their reading is the assertion that this was intended and that this is. We lost Josh. That's one of the things about
being rude. I booted him. He's being too talkative.
Ah, damn it, Josh.
We don't stand for that on my channel.
That was one of the things about inerrancy, is you can't engage with the many different readings and layers of it. You have to say it means this, it only means this, it only ever meant this, and that is inspired. That's what God wanted it to mean. And I think that's one of the things that corrupts it, is when they turn it into that, because then it, for someone who has that perspective in their background and are conditioned to that perspective, it's all or nothing. It's very brittle. I
agree with that.
And I think that's what makes it so harmful for their own faith community to treat it that way.
I think my issue lies in the people, like in those people that have that brittle ideology with it. Because I don't have anything personally against it. Actually, I became an atheist without ever studying the Bible. I just didn't find a need to, and I found this community. It was really interesting how relevant they believed they had to discuss, like how important it was that they were discussing the Bible. And I was just like, I never went through any of this, and I still believe what I believe, because of my own personal experiences, which is why I don't have an issue when people come in with their own concepts. But when I see someone with a closed mind, that's when I get heartbroken. So it's just the understanding that goes beyond just the text. It's beyond just the Bible. It's the concept that people can have faith and also understand others' faiths without the need to try and transpose their own onto them. That's my own personal. Anyway, those my 2 cents. I rubbed them together, and now you can keep going. We lost Josh.
I think, has he contacted either of you to say
he'll pop back in backstage?
Yeah. I'm gonna take a wild guess and say it has something to
happens.
do with the babies, but we could.
Yeah, I think that there's a degree to which people want to create kind of a binary, brittle faith, because to draw a harder boundary around it makes it easier to police that boundary. And I think they feel like they're protecting the boundary a lot more, but it makes that boundary so brittle at the same time, because if one card falls, the whole thing shatters. And it makes it easier for people to say, nope, not for me.
Yeah, no, I see that. I mean, yeah, studying anthropology is you really go out. It is a challenge to step out of your own comfort zone when you are a white American studying anthropology. And I have done everything I can to put myself in some really, really awkward situations. And I both love and hate it. And that's the whole idea. But at this point, I feel like, I mean, you were saying it's like you're always having to take a mental step back and like assess how you're viewing things in order to understand whether or not you're giving a bias, whether that bias be an initial intent or whether or not it's just something that you just assumed. It was just like an instinct to be on this side of the argument versus that. It's always fascinating to see where people will land on topics that they really don't know much about, just to see what instinct, like how their instinct pushes them to one side or the other. And it has,
they're absolute experts.
Well, then there's those that like you bring up a subject and they're like, oh yes, I know this. It's like, oh yeah, tell me.
and I see every now and then people will comment on my videos where they don't know how to take what I'm saying. And they don't know, and they think that they will know how to take it once they know whose team I'm on. And so they're like, all right, what's that?
Oh, I just want to point out, did you guys see that like grouping of messages towards the beginning? They wanted to know who the theists were in this discussion prior to our. At this point, I don't want anyone to say anything about their own personal preferences. I realize I just kind of let the cat out of the bag, but I'm just like, at this point, I just don't want anyone to say anything and just let them be confused.
Well, and that's kind of what I do on my channel. I'm kind of open about I'm an active Latter-day Saint, and that's all you're getting from me, because once people think that I'm on their team or not on their team, they immediately have a compartment for everything that I say, and they're not going to be able to engage with the data. And so that's one of the main reasons that I'm doing this, is because I want people to just think about this independent of the identity politics.
We all do that, right?
Yeah,
we totally do that. I find I do that even when I'm reading like scholarly articles. If I'll encounter something that piques my interest from someone I don't know, a name I've not recognized, I'll do a little Google. I'll be like, oh yeah, okay, they studied at this school, worked under this this teacher. So it like, and then from that moment forward, it's like it's seared into your brain, and and you can't shake that perception anymore, for good or for bad, right?
Yeah, I can be that way on Twitter. Like when people will get on my case, I'll go check out their profile and be like, "Who you following?" And you said this, so I don't have to listen to you at all because you're one of them. And every time I do that now, I have to stop and
Don't you find it so interesting that in social media you can't change your mind? Have you noticed that? People get so mad if you like change your mind on the subject. They're like, but you said this previously. I'm like, yeah, but I'm discrediting myself at this point.
Yep.
So,
I've made a point of trying to be open and upfront about doing that. Like I've made some videos in the past saying where the whole video was to say somebody said this and I was wrong and I'm correcting myself and I want you all to know that I'm correcting myself. Not every time. I sometimes I don't even want to. Still don't want to admit I was wrong.
I had someone create an entire page dedicated to a rock that I accidentally mislabeled. I kid you not.
Jeez.
Actually, Dadpool knows about this too.
Wow.
It's the turtle dude. But
as like a shit post.
It wasn't.
The turtle rock.
The turtle rock.
Geez.
It's like, those of you that don't know, you can go follow him sometime. He's interesting. He likes to just throw. He doesn't throw my name around anymore, but he does like to throw out that professionals obviously don't know what they're talking about. So I mislabeled his rock as a I called it a Petoskey stone. I'm sorry, it's a Petoskey stone. But then after further analysis, I could tell that it was a crinoid calyx. Or calyx, and he took the fact that I corrected myself and went with, no, it's a fossilized baby turtle shell. I was like, good luck finding someone that is going to agree with you. And so he goes to like people that are like chemists and hands it to him, and they're like, what kind of rock is that? Chemists don't freaking know. It's like, I don't know, it looks like a turtle. He's like, see, professionals. So I don't interact with him anymore. But hey, now you know.
and so much of it is just scoring internet points,
right?
And
he was claiming it was for clout on my case, but I only interacted with him twice. He has been posting, like, he made an entire page based around this little rock, which I believe he named Little Baby Giblet. Giblet? Was that right? Something like that. Goodness, we're getting spammed tonight.
I already blocked them once. How does that keep happening?
I don't know.
It's not even letting me block them now.
What? Okay, hold on. I'll pop on and try.
It's saying an error occurred. So let me do it. Yeah. Yeah. There's a massive shortage of people who are willing to correct themselves and say like, hey, I believe this, and I've since changed my opinion, because there's that minority of people is just overwhelmed by people who were just cocksure of their premature opinion about something that they know very little about.
And I think a lot of people are afraid too that once they admit error, that they're getting dismissed by a lot of people who are like, okay, I'm unfollow. I can't trust you anymore.
Yeah. I've had that happen. Like when I've made videos like, hey, I was wrong about this. So I want to correct myself. And then someone, like one time someone was like, you've proven yourself to be unreliable, so I'm unfollowing you. And I was like, really? Well, then you go follow all the people who are just die hard about their opinions. That's a great way to practice growth in your scholarship.
As Dr. Josh says, this is not my area of expertise, but this would be what I believe is the mainstream agreement of what some discussion that we're talking about. But yeah, saying that is, it's true. The more you know, the more you realize you don't know. And that's kind of a fun thing, but also like it's way overpowering to the senses when you start to really, really realize it.
Not the truth.
That's why the masters got started but did not get finished. It's like, well, I don't know anything. It's like nothing is real.
Yeah, and that's what part of the Dunning-Kruger effect is about. It's not just the people who know the least or the most confident. It's about this whole trajectory of being totally confident, being totally unconfident, and then building back the confidence as you realistically gather data and knowledge.
But as you're gathering that data, you drop again. Like every time you get some new data, you're like, oh, shoot, you're down again.
It's bigger than I expected.
The roller coaster is real, man. And intellectual roller coasters are for real. Like, who needs real metal contraptions when you're just like constantly having existential crises?
And sometimes I wonder, I feel like, man, it would have been so exciting to be a scholar, like, in the Renaissance or something like that, where you could
I
be
would have been murdered. Oh no, I would have been killed.
Well, yeah.
It's like it would have been so exciting. Not really, not for me. I'm a woman.
But there's so much specialization and these days, and there's so much data out there that you have to be working in a tiny little corner, and when you become aware of everything else that's out there, it's so intimidating. But we don't have those generalists anymore,
and it's happening so fast now too, right?
Yeah.
Like I remember Craig Evans at Trinity in one of our New Testament seminars told us that when he was in graduate school, you could literally read the entire bibliography of historical Jesus studies. Like it was, that was something that you could do within your, within your time doing your dissertation, and you're expected to do that, right? It's impossible now, just because it's, the amount of information has just exploded to such a degree that even the specializations are becoming too
siloed and
yeah.
Like I remember growing up, like I grew up, without the internet, just like you guys did. Like we had encyclopedias, like a list, like out A through Z. So as a kid, if I ever wanted to know something, I would pull up that encyclopedia, look it up, and see if it just happened to have something in there about whatever I was trying to learn about. And if it didn't, oh well, I guess I'm not going to find out the answer. But now it's like, if I want the answer to something, I can.
Yeah.
So there's a comic. It's a little duck, and I forget who the other character is, but it was like before Google. Somebody's like, "Oh, I just thought of something I'd like to know more about," and the other one's like, "Well, that's a gosh darn shame."
Oh, I get it.
So now you can just hop over to Google and I want to know more about this.
And what's crazy is people don't even do that.
Yeah, they just go on TikTok and say Jesus was created by astrology.
Yeah.
Oh
gosh.
Yeah.
Or they'll just ask you, like, "Hey, I don't know, a really basic question." Like,
Was
that you could
Jesus
Google
crucified?
very easily. Yeah, like, was Jesus crucified? Was Jesus real? How many books in the Bible are there? What translation is the best to use? You can Google that very easily, but like, so I've that's why I don't answer those questions. Like, if you're not willing to put forth at least the most minimal effort into answering your own question, I'm not going to help you.
Does anyone play the Google game with their family members now? Like, now that it's become so common, where it's like you guys will say something and then someone will say something else, and it's a discrepancy, and you're like, no. So you just have to Google it like right on the spot. It's like, oh, I got to make sure. No, you were right. Damn it, it's $5.
No, I do that. I do that with my kids all the time.
I do that with my stepdad every now and then. He'll be like, no, the Earth has such and such number of population. And I'm just like, no. So much fun. But yeah. So we're coming up on a 2-hour mark. I want to ask if you guys have Discord, if you want to chat. We obviously have people in the chat room that's want to talk to you. We didn't really get to a Q&A, not too much tonight, but
yeah. Sorry to everyone who asked questions. I didn't bring them up because I was personally invested in the conversation, and
then I took it over because I'm me.
I can probably hang around for a bit.
But yeah,
sometimes we do an after party in the Discord. So
Dan, do you have a Discord?
You don't have to at all. It's just like a little extra.
Dan's confused.
I don't have a Discord. I don't.
It's like
Okay.
know.
Yeah, it's not something you can just jump into.
It's like a
Yeah,
gamer
you have to
thing.
download it.
Discord is a
really?
whole thing, and it's annoying, and I hate it.
I disagree. I think it's great. There's a lot of science communities on Discord,
Okay.
but
There's a lot of great
it was made
communities.
for.
It's a lot to learn. It's not
It
like
is,
you can't just create an account and then just boom, you're there. It's a whole thing.
Is it? Somebody said it was like a gamer thing. Is this? Like
Is it a gamer thing?
It is. They can stream games and
It
you can
can
like
be.
play over
You can
online
use it as a
with each
streaming
other.
platform, but it's not just that. Like,
I don't know. Do
all
you
kinds
play
of
video
communities
games,
can
Dan?
use
Because
it.
if you do, Discord might be for you.
Man, I played Excite Bike for a long time.
I don't even know what that
is. Punch Out. I was really good at Punch Out.
I don't know what that is either. I also don't play video games, so I don't know what anything is.
I think GoldenEye was about where I stopped playing.
I know what that one is. I know that one.
We had a Super Nintendo in my dorm room, my semester at the University of Northern Colorado before I got kicked out.
Wait,
that was the last.
What?
You got kicked out.
You got kicked
What?
out.
Oh yeah.
I know we're about to end the show, but
now I need
We
to
have to
know.
hear about this now.
Okay, so the first time I went to college was in 1998. I graduated from high school with like a 2.6 GPA because I just didn't care. I was either going to be a comic book artist or a professional golfer, and I just didn't care about school. And then I somehow managed to get into the University of Northern Colorado in Greeley, Colorado. I graduated high school from Niwot High School, which is near Longmont, Colorado. And I went to the University of Northern Colorado, and I was taking graphic arts, and I went to class for a couple weeks, and then I realized I could just hang out at Denny's and smoke weed and drink SoCo and bounce checks to Pizza Hut, and nobody's here to tell me I can't.
Okay, hold on. Before we continue, I have to take a small break and say, how long have you been with the LDS Church?
I joined the LDS Church when I was 20.
Okay, so this was before then.
This was before then.
Just wanted to clarify.
And I found out how fun it was to be on my own and to be surrounded by people my age who also did not have anybody around telling them they couldn't do that kind of stuff. So I had a phenomenal 4 months. Yeah, 4 months. And got in some fights, got chased by the cops a little bit, got in some trouble, got a D- in one class and an F in all the rest. Went home for the winter break and got a letter kindly inviting me not to come back the next semester. So I left the University of Northern Colorado with a 0.29 GPA. And when a couple years later, joined the LDS Church, went on a mission, they were like, well, you got to go to school when you get back. And I was like, yeah, let me tell you a funny story.
So about that.
Yeah. Didn't think I would really have any options. But I went to, I served a mission for the church in Uruguay. I learned Spanish. Came back and I went to BYU. I did what they call a visiting student summer semester. Took a Spanish class, tested out of like 19 hours of Spanish. And I went to the admissions counselor. I was like, I'd like to apply for, a real degree program. But I have this 0.29, but I just tested out of all this. And they're like, we need 30 credit hours to transfer. And I had taken a semester at a community college in Dallas. At the time, it was called Collin County Community College. Now it's called Collin College. But I had 30 hours. They're like, you only need 30 to transfer, and you can ask them to just look at your last 30 hours. And I had a 4.0. So I waltzed in as a transfer student to BYU with a 0.29 on my record that they didn't even look at. And then every university I applied to after that and went to, Oxford, Trinity Western, Exeter, I had to write a little letter saying,
oh, really? You're
0.29 on
You're
here.
0.29. They didn't accept that at Trinity? I'm surprised.
Oh,
I had to explain what was going
Savage.
on. Yeah. No, they cared to some degree. But so I got kicked out of college because I enjoyed myself for a semester, and then I learned how to study and I learned to care about education, and came back and feel like I did a pretty good job. And
See, I think that was
Go
that
ahead.
was the big difference between high school me and college me.
yeah,
I think like high school me was I was an idiot. But
We're all
you
kind
know,
of idiots.
once I started, like I was married before I started college, and once like I'm in school, and you know, I'm you know, we're footing the bill for this, and my wife's working so that, you know, we can keep eating while I'm doing this. Wow, that that absolutely changed my perspective on things.
yeah.
So,
Yeah, so I have a sorted background, and and that's just the stuff I feel like sharing with the whole world. So
that's fun though.
I mean,
See,
not gonna lie,
I've never
I want to have you back on so I can pick more about this.
Yeah.
Both of you.
See, I've actually been really straight edge my entire life. I've never smoked weed. I've never done drugs of any kind. Like I've always been like, never messed around with girls until I got married and all that. So this whole like, you just wanted to be an atheist so you could sin. I'm like, when can I start?
He literally started becoming an
I'm
atheist
waiting-
and then married another
I'm
woman.
waiting for all these great things that are supposed to happen when you become an atheist.
Don't worry, they're not that great.
it's kind of like I was raised to believe I would be offered free drugs a lot more frequently.
Right?
Yeah, I thought that would be a much bigger problem I'd have to deal with.
No, I
man.
just, well,
Yeah.
I am shockingly naive for an atheist, let me tell you. We had a whole discussion in Tang I want to say about a week ago, describing like, because I had a rock and I had it in a tiny itty bitty plastic bag. And then somebody said, Nat, where did you get your dime bags? And I was like, I'm sorry, my what? This is an artifact bag. And from then it just escalated from there.
Oh, awesome.
man.
It's like, well, I get
Excuse
them
me.
from the
Right.
science store.
As much as I would love to continue this conversation, I've
We've
had a
gotta
great
move.
time.
All righty.
I'm gonna let you guys go. You've given me enough of your time. I really do appreciate it. Thanks again, Dan, for coming on.
Yeah, I
I
was happy
appreciate
to
your
join you.
content. And yeah, so one more time, you can find Dan McClellan on TikTok, as many of you already know, and Dr. Kipp has his own YouTube channel as well. I neglected to link in the description, so my bad. I'll try to correct that.
It doesn't matter.
Well, I'll be on Discord for a bit if anyone wants to come over.
it's just
Are you,
courtesy I need.
Are you posting a link for that, or
Yes, Titan
Yeah, there
just
should be a
did.
link already in the Discord. So if anyone have, I don't think I'm going to jump in there. It's been a very long day. I'm
Oh, there
pretty
we
ready for bed.
That's cool.
okay,
That's fine.
cool.
Well, thank you so much.
Well, thanks for
everyone.
having us.
The invite. Appreciate your time. Hope
Yeah.
I
Dan,
didn't,
talk
kill the vibe too much.
No,
No, that was
not
great.
at all. Want to talk more?
One of my favorite episodes, I think.
Awesome.
All right. Thanks again, everyone. Y'all have a good night.
Cool.
All right.
Good night.
Bye.
Night.